Hello to everyone from Kazan. I'm really happy to be with you guys and to share a little bit of my knowledge and my practical experience. As you can see on the presentation, I will be talking about the return to play process with a special focus on the external load monitoring and management after rehab. I'm gonna share with you an example from my experience regarding hamstring tears and how we manage it normally in professional basketball. Before I explain a little bit the final phase, the sport phase of the rehabilitation, and then how we manage loads during the last stage and how we progress into return to train and return to play part of the process, I would like to walk you through a couple of steps that I believe are important to know and something that I usually follow together with my medical department and of course coaches. So first, when the injury occurs, we have of course the medical evaluation and whatever physiotherapists and doctor say, we have to respect. So based on their evaluation, we plan our rehab. After that process of rehab, which can be some kind of fusion between medical staff, head physiotherapist and strength and conditioning coach, or hopefully a rehabilitation coach in some of the teams. Later, we make another evaluation, or we can call it re-evaluation between both medical staff and strength and conditioning staff, so we can be sure that we are progressing in a good direction and we are heading towards return to train process, which means that player will start to train basketball individually and with a team, and finally he will play some games. Of course, return to train, return to play process can be considered somewhat the same, because once we start practicing with the team, players should also be able to participate in the game, but still we know that in some cases, especially if the injury was pretty severe, we should spend and separate the return to train phase from the return to play, because first player needs to get more confidence during training in order to play against the opponent he doesn't know. We know all that if player comes after an injury, especially after hard injury, his teammates might not play against that player very tough, so we have to give some time to player to adapt and adjust to a new situation of practicing again with his team, and give him some time, or her some time to start playing games against the opponent, the real opponent he usually doesn't know that well. Also, before I give you an example how we deal with return to train and return to play process, I just want to explain a little bit also the rehabilitation phase, which can be, as I said, a general rehabilitation, which is focused more with physiotherapists, and later on with strength and conditioning coach or a rehab specialist. And I just wanted to say that when the injury occurs and we have this evaluation, the medical evaluation, we don't wait the whole rehabilitation process to end and then we have another re-evaluation. Of course, we will have evaluations at different points and in different stages of that rehabilitation process, which are going to be related to many different things, such as players' range of motion, flexibility, muscle strength, and and so on. So basically, if we look at the rehabilitation after a hamstring tear, like a partial rupture of hamstrings, we would have some general phase where probably the site of injury would be avoided. So maybe upper body work, a lot of core stuff that don't have impact on hamstrings activation and so on. And then we're going to make an evaluation together with physiotherapists and progress to the phase where we are still not running, but we can maybe start using a bike, or we can maybe use a anti-gravity treadmill, move and work in the pool and so on. Then later on we will evaluate again the strength and function of hamstring muscles, and then if everything is okay regarding that, we can progress to low and moderate running, and of course if we are talking about in-season process, players should also continue to work on their skills in a low to moderate intensity, which means some dribbling and shooting. So later on, if muscle strength becomes better and range of motion is almost perfect, optimal, we will move to higher intensity running and higher intensity skills practices, and with good evaluation after the high intensity phase, we can talk about progress into return to train and return to play part of the rehab, the latest stages basically of sport rehabilitation. Now, this is one table from my book, and I'm very happy to share it with all of you. And this is basically now this moment where after the high intensity running and high intensity skills, we want to evaluate and be sure that player can go into next stage of return to train with the team. Okay, so I think we should always have two sides of the coin when we are talking about return to train, because sometimes objective criteria can show great things, but if we don't consider the subjective part and feedback from our player, we are making a huge mistake. So from subjective part, I think it's very important that player in the last stage of rehabilitation, when he's about to join the team to train again, it is very important to be pain free. Okay, so when he's doing different movements, changes of direction, jumps and so on, turning on the court, decelerating and reaccelerating, he should be completely pain free. Of course, that ranges of motion should also be optimal. He should say that he is ready for a random contact. Okay, so it is all about not anymore about changing of direction, which is pre-planned, but also agility, okay, which is more sudden and rich in abrupt stops, changes of direction and so on. And of course, players should not have some residual fatigue or elevated muscle soreness, okay, especially when it comes to soft tissue injuries such as hamstrings or quadriceps partial ruptures, okay, or ruptures. When we talk about objective criteria, of course, we might run some kind of a pre-planned change of direction test, where we just want to see that performance in the test is back to normal. And I think the most important thing, and this is connected to the external load monitoring when it comes to microtechnology and tracking players' volume and different movements, especially high intensity movements such as accelerations, decelerations, changes of directions or jumps. I think at this point, of the last phase of the rehabilitation before the player joins the team to train, I think it is important to do at least 3 training sessions, which will be in a volume more or less like a typical 75 minutes team practice. Okay, and it should of course include both individual skills, which means dribbling, shooting, and also one-on-one contact. One-on-one contact can be done with the assistance of coach, or in the best way if we can bring a player who can help a younger guy who is maybe not practicing that much with a team or participating in games that much, then in that case we can use him to help our player who is coming back after injury. Of course, it's not all about volume. We should also track the intensity, especially the high intensity movements, and the microtechnology and GPS system or local positioning system, we should better use that word, can provide a lot of great information regarding the high intensity movements, and in that case accelerations, decelerations, jumps, changes of direction should also be similar. The amount of these high intensity movements should be similar to the 75 minutes team practice. Okay, now how it looks, and probably this is the slide that is the most important in this presentation, another graphic from my book. So in this one you can see that this is the final rehab phase, okay, and this is the moment where player comes back to the team. Okay, so what we said on the previous slide, that the minimum of 3 training sessions where player will do some kind of basketball skills and contact. So we had 1 session like this, basketball skills and contact, second basketball skills and contact session, and then a little bit lighter day with only basketball skills without contact, and the third practice with basketball skills and contact for that player, after which he gets a day off and he can join the team. We can see that also in volume by arbitrary units, we are very close to the values that player will have once he joins the team, okay, in some cases even more, which is very important. Okay, we want to be sure that player can cope with even higher volumes, so this practice is the last test also regarding the volume, and in case coach needs to practice a little bit more with the team on a given day. And also what we said, that high intensity changes of direction and high intensity decelerations, for example, can and should be very important for us. Okay, so when we compare it to, for example, this day, which was maybe the highest intensity day, where we had 33 highest intensity changes of direction, okay, we also had here during this period here even more, so we know that player can tolerate these high intensity actions. Okay, so I think this is the minimum that we should have in the last stage of the final rehab phase, which includes basketball skills and contact, in order that player can join the team in a cycle where we prepare for the next game. Here, in the stage where player returns to the team, and we have this is the whole practice, okay, the practice is represented through both red and gray column, okay, but since it's a new shock for a player, we should still think that player does only one part of the practice. So first practice that he joins the team, okay, which is way different when it comes to contact and tasks that maybe this player did. Okay, we decided that he does in the first return to train with the team practice only 65 to 75% of the whole volume. Okay, so in volume he does only this red part. Okay, second practice he does a little bit more, 75 to 90% of team practice, and one day before the game we want this player to finish the whole practice with the team, which will also be important from the mental point of view. And of course, in this first game, we should probably limit some playing time, talk to player, talk to coach, you know, and then maybe put some limit to playing time, which can be 10 to 15 minutes. And then in this case, if we compete in the game 2 in just 3 days, which is pretty normal for professional basketball, then we can, depending on the plan of the team practices, but in this case, we will not practice a lot. It means that players should fully participate in team practices. Okay, so if we talk about 5 team practices with a team after the final phase of sports rehab, then maybe in the first 2 or 3 practices we can do a certain percentage of that team practice, but in the later stage of that first week we should look that player does at least half of the practices full. Okay, and this is some this is an example from CATAPULT technology that I was using in the previous club. And then you can see here, here's an example of a list of players, okay? Just for the privacy, I covered it. And we have one player who was coming back after injury. We decided that he's gonna do around 60% in this first practice, 60% of total team practice volume. And you can see this is the player that was returning to train with the team. You can see this represents the whole team practice. Okay, the whole team practice was 459 arbitrary units of work. This was average for the whole team, but you can see that this player did only 265 arbitrary units. And this guy was a younger guy who was his substitution for the whole practice. So what we did was we allowed our player to participate in the whole team practice. We didn't stop him in the middle or after 60% of the practice, because for the coach and for the player, it was important that player participates in every drill that we were using. Okay, so in this case, we decided that player will do the whole practice, which in time is maybe 1 hour, 30 minutes. Okay, but with the good substitutions, we were able to control live through our micro technology that player does only 60%, okay, with adequate substitution. And then you can see maybe from in different drills, you can see that after the preparation and after some no contact basketball, for example, in this drill, which is 5-on-5 full court with stops, we can see how well these two players distributed load with good substitutions, because the average load in that drill for our team was 140. So we respected this even in this drill, around 60% of total drill volume. It can also be seen in this drill, okay, which is also one 5-on-5 drill, okay, where the volume, average volume in this drill for the team was around 80 arbitrary units, but our player did only around 45, which was distributed also with this young player who helped with good substitutions. So basically, this is an example of how we normally deal with return to train and return to play process. Of course, in practice, it's much more complex, and we also have to consider not only the acute volume of work, but also we have to consider the chronic load the player has during the last 2, 3, or 4 weeks. We have to see also what kind of practices player did in the last 2 to 3, even 4 weeks, so we can be sure that he's ready to participate in team practices. Because just to give you an example of what we had currently in the team, player was at home due to Corona. He was asymptomatic, so at home he continued to work, but he was out from basketball court for 2 weeks. After he joined the team, he was first of all really happy, and of course, due to some other problems with some other players who were also at home with Corona, his return to train with the team was very, very valuable. But after 4 or 5 days of practicing with the team, playing some friendly games, he started to feel more tightness in one of his quadriceps muscles, which was caused probably by a little bit of acute overload with special moments that this player at home could not perform. So we also have to consider chronic loads and also the quality of that chronic load when one player is returning after an injury, and in that way compare the external volume of work of acute activities compared to the chronic ones. As I said, this is just an example to share a little bit with you, to give you an idea how I like to approach things in my daily work, and how I like to approach and explain things to the players I'm working with, coaching staff and medical department. Of course, for whatever you need, you have here my contacts, and feel free to contact me. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a nice day, and have a nice rest of the conference. Bye-bye.